Well, you know, John Myers joined this law firm where I've been for a long time in 1936. At that time, I was 10 years old and living in North Dakota, so most of what I know about Johnny Myers is secondhand. But I did meet him after I came back from my service in government in the 1980s. My father was a judge of the California Supreme Court and then Chief Justice of the California Supreme Court, and he joined this law firm in 1925. Johnny Myers joined O'Melveny and Myers in 1936. He had just graduated from Harvard Law School. And after a year or so, the firm opened an office in Hollywood in the CBS headquarters. And John Myers was sent out to that office in 1937, I believe it was, to be the first staff attorney, our first branch attorney of all the branches we have. We have now 13 branches around the world, but Johnny Myers started. Well, you know, Johnny Myers has loved flying all of his life, I think. When he went to Harvard Law School, he had an airplane of his own. And there's a story that I hear, and I think it's largely accurate anyway. Johnny Myers was flying home after the first year in law school, and he brought with him a young man who was going to join O'Melveny and Myers, Ray Lindman. And Ray was a hefty fellow, and Johnny Myers was flying out, and he had to let Ray off on the east side of the Rockies because he was too heavy to fly over the Rockies. He picked him up, I think, in El Paso after he'd flown over the Rockies. So the picture I have of Johnny Myers is flying in this open airplane, flying over the Rockies, probably with his goggles on and a scarf flying back of him. So that's the picture I have, first picture I have of Johnny Myers. Yes, I knew him quite well. He came into the firm at my invitation for lunch a number of times. He brought slides and showed slides. We had to persuade him to do that. He was quite modest about his flying exploits. But boy, was he some kind of a man. He was respected all over this town. He lived a long time, and his respect grew over the years. Let me tell you this about Johnny Myers. You know, lawyers are fairly proud of what they do, but we all probably have a Walter Mitty life. We want to be something special. And Johnny Myers was that Walter Mitty person for many of us. After he was here 3 years, he left the firm to become a test pilot at Lockheed. And what a life he had, you know, at Lockheed and Northrop. He tested almost every one of the major planes that was developed during that period. He was very adventurous, and I think he had at least 9 lives for all the things that he did in his life. After he stopped being a test pilot, he started Pacific Air Motive, which was a client of our firm for a number of years. You probably heard about this from others. But he was a man's man. Everybody loved Johnny Myers, and his flying background never deserted him. I think he flew as long as he lived, or as long as he could fly. Well, he had a very strong character. Like most of us, he had some tragedy in his life, but he pulled through it, and he lived through it very well. And of course, he was severely injured in flying. He came back from that very strong. You never know it from talking with John what he'd gone through, but he'd gone through a lot in his life, and he ended always upbeat, always with a smile on his face. Well, Johnny was a very humble guy. He knew what he'd accomplished, but he also understood that the world was full of accomplishments, so he was just one of many. I would say anybody who grew up in Southern California and had anything to do with aviation would know about Johnny Myers, because he was a legend both at Lockheed and then at Northrop. So those are the two great companies in this area, and everybody there knew Johnny Myers, and everybody there liked him because he was such a terrific guy, just a wonderful man's man. You know, aviation is what really made Southern California. We built a lot of airplanes here. Lockheed did during World War II, and after World War II, both those companies, both Lockheed and Northrop, profited, and so did this city. Los Angeles really came of age during World War II. We built thousands, hundreds of thousands of airplanes here. A lot of people came into this city, so we were a relatively small city, but after the war, we grew to be a great metropolis. Johnny had a terrific sense of humor. He could tell a good story, but he not only told stories, but he laughed with others about the stories they told. We all loved that about Johnny, because he had this rippling laughter, and we were around him. You just enjoyed being with him. He's been a valued alum of this firm as long as I can remember. We were always proud to have Johnny Myers be one of our alums. So I say he would come around and have lunch with us occasionally, and then we were able to persuade him to bring his slides once or twice and show us the aircraft that he had helped develop. What a story that was. I'm sort of one of the people who tries to keep the history alive, and I always tell them about Mr. Henry O'Melveny, who started this place, Judge Myers, who joined it. And I always revert to his son, Johnny Myers, and tell the Johnny Myers story about Johnny Myers left for what we all regarded as better things. I think he's going to be remembered as a great friend, but an intrepid aviator. He really had courage and guts to fly those airplanes and have an accident and still come back and want to fly again. So he was, as I say, a man's man.